He served the town of Santa Cruz as a businessman for many years. He served the Santa Cruz division as a councillor for over 2 decades. Roads were named in his honor. A clock tower was erected in the town of Santa Cruz in his memory. We are talking about the man, Mr. Irving Frankfurt Hanson. In this video, we explore his final moments in life. This video looks at how Mr. Irving Hanson really died. Welcome to Jamaican Chapter. Before looking at how Mr. Irving Hanson died, it is important to take a look at his roots. And so we will look at his ancestors. Irving Hanson's parents were Leonard Joseph Hanson and Constance Anna Robertson. His paternal grandparents were Mary Bonella Cole and Elmas Blairy Hanson. His great-grandparents were Joseph Abraham Cole and Susan Bradford Cole. Let's start with the great-grandparents. Joseph Abraham Cole was born in 1812 to a slave named Margaret Chambers and a white man only mentioned by his surname as Coles. This is a baptism record book from 1814. At the top of the book, it says, "Baptisms of persons not white in 1814. So this book recorded the baptisms of black slaves, both children and adults. And among the names is the entry for Joseph Abraham Cole. In his entry, it reads, Joseph Abraham Cole, son of Margaret Chambers, a quadroon, aged 2 years old. Now look at it. The entry says that Joseph Abraham Cole is a quadroon, meaning in this case, his father was white and his mother was a black woman of mixed race. In the entry, Abraham Joseph Cole is described as age 2 years old. Now, since this is a baptism in 1814, we can simply backtrack 2 years to the year 1812. So we know that Abraham Joseph Cole was born in 1812 in slavery in St. Elizabeth, Jamaica. So he grew up and he fell in love with a young black woman named Susan Bradford Leng. On January 30, 1833, they got married. Joseph Abraham Cole was age 20 or 21 at the time of the marriage. Their marriage was recorded in this book, a book holding records of marriages that happened in the parish of St. Elizabeth. The book shows their marriage as the first marriage to have happened in January of 1833 in the parish of St. Elizabeth. It says, Joseph Abraham Coles and Susan Bradford Leng, both of the parish of St. Elizabeth, were married by license on the 30th day of January in the year 1833 by me, Thomas P. Williams, rector. Now, the word rector at the end there, it means a priest in the Anglican Church who is in charge of a particular area. So, Thomas P. Williams, who performed the wedding, was the rector of St. Elizabeth at the time, and thus was in charge of the rites, tithes, marriages, and so on in St. Elizabeth. He conducted many marriages, as you can see on the book. He conducted many marriages, including that of Joseph Abraham Cole and Susan Bradford Leng, who then became Susan Bradford Coles. So remember, these two people, Joseph Abraham Cole and Susan Bradford Cole, are the paternal great-grandparents of Irving Hanson. They had several children together. One of them was a girl child called Mary Bonella Cole, who was born on May 13, 1837. This is important. Listen. Mary Bonella Cole was the first of Irving Hanson's ancestors to have born after the abolition of slavery in Jamaica. Record of her birth was made in this book from the Anglican Church in St. Elizabeth. A closer look shows her name, date of birth, and the names of her mother and father. Her father, Joseph Abraham Cole, is described in the record as a planter. In other words, a farmer. Mary Bonella Cole grew up. As every child do, you grow up. So Mary Bonella Cole grew up and fell in love with a young black male named Elmas Blairy Hanson. They got married on December 16, 1857 in St. Elizabeth. They, of course, would become the grandparents of Irving Hanson. Record of their marriage was made in this church record book and shows that the marriage was performed by the Reverend R.B. Lynch. Mary Bonella Hanson and her husband, Elmas Blairy Hanson, are the grandparents of Irving Hanson. They had a son in 1863, and they named him Leonard Joseph Hanson. Baptism record shows that Leonard Joseph Hanson was baptized on July 31, 1863. He was born on April 19 of the same year, 1863. He grew up and began working mainly as a saddler, which a saddler was someone who make, repair, and sell saddles for horses and, of course, even donkeys. Of course, the profession of saddler, of course, no longer exists today because people nowadays do not rely on or rely less on donkeys and horses in transportation. So you won't find anybody today who is called a saddler or whose profession is saddler. At least not many people. Now, Leonard Joseph Hanson, at a young age, fell in love with a young woman named Constance Anna Robertson. She was the daughter of a man called John Robertson. On October 15, 1891, the two young lovers got married. Leonard Joseph Hanson was just aged 28 and Constance Anna Robertson, now Constance Anna Hanson, was only aged 24. She was born in 1867. At the marriage, she was 9 months pregnant, and 9 days later, she gave birth to a daughter. 10 years later, in 1901, the couple had a son, and they named him Irving Hanson. 40 years would pass. So 40 years later, on September 8, 1942, Leonard Joseph Hanson died. He was 82 years old. This is a copy of his death registration form. So this is a copy of his death registration form. Okay, so we have looked at the great-grandparents of Irving Hanson, the grandparents, and now we look at the man himself, Irving Hanson. Of course, this video is all about him and how he died. Irving Hanson was born on November 13, 1901 in Burnt Ground, St. Elizabeth. This is a copy of his birth registration form. As a young man, he fell in love with a young woman named Ina Bedford Hay. She was the daughter of Charles Hay and Minnie Hanson. She also was born in St. Elizabeth on July 22, 1902. And this is a copy of her birth registration form. On November 3, 1935, Irving Hanson and Ina Bedford Hay got married in the presence of a crowd of family and friends inside the St. Matthew Anglican Church in Santa Cruz, St. Elizabeth. This is a copy of their marriage registry. Throughout their union, the couple had 4 children. By the start of the 1980s, Irving Hanson had already become an old man and had retired. Among his list of contributions are he served the town of Santa Cruz as a counselor for over 2 decades, and it is said that he was an easy to approach counselor and that he did well in the Santa Cruz division in helping persons in his capacity as counselor. He also served the town of Santa Cruz as a businessman for many years. He gave life also to 4 children and was the best husband he could have been. By 1983, the sun began to set on Irving Hanson's life. Old age slowed his movement, while a stubborn disease wrecked his body with pain. Doctor visits after doctor visit brought no solution. On Saturday, May 26, 19 84, Irving Frankfurt Hanson died. So he died on Saturday, May 26, 1984. This is his death registration form. It shows his last residence. It shows his age, gender, occupation, and marital status. But the most important part of this death registration form for this video is the cause of death. As we know, every death registration form will show the cause of death of the deceased. On the right side of the death registration form is the answer we are looking for. It states, cause of death, renal failure caused by chronic obstructive urinary disease. Let me interpret this, because I want to say it again. It clearly says cause of death, renal failure caused by chronic obstructive urinary disease. Now, in interpreting this, we know that renal failure means kidney failure. It could mean failure of one or both kidney. But because a person can live with one kidney, I will have to assume that in the case of Irving Hanson, it was the failure of both his kidneys. Now let's look back at the complete cause of death. It says cause of death is renal failure caused by chronic obstructive urinary disease. We now know that renal failure means kidney failure. But what does it mean by chronic obstructive urinary disease? Chronic obstructive urinary disease means that there is a constant recurrence of blockage in the urinary tract. This will cause you to have, difficulty passing urine, which as a result can damage the kidneys. So to put it in simple terms, Mr. Irving Hanson's cause of death is kidney failure due to constant recurrence of blockage in his urinary tract. Or to put it even simpler, Irving Hanson died of kidney failure. So, what happened to his wife? How did she die? Mistress Ina Bedford Hanson, that's Mistress Ina Bedford Hanson, lived for 11 years after the death of her husband. And she also, unfortunately, died of kidney failure. That's a coincidence or what? So she also died of kidney failure. This is her death registration form. It shows that she died on June 16, 1995, at the age of 92. The death registration form says that her cause of death, and I quote, renal failure due to lower gastrointestinal bleeding. So she had bleeding in the lower part of her intestines. Mistress Ina Bedford Hanson was buried in the churchyard of the St. Matthew Anglican Church beside her husband in Santa Cruz, St. Elizabeth.